we in Ladakh, when we make artificial glaciers or solar heated houses, we feel very good, but very soon we think that us doing this in some remote corner of the mountains doesn't really solve the problem.
Hello and welcome. This is Puneet Surana and you are listening to the Galata podcast. Galata is a word from the Indian language Kannada that means the noise caused by a ruckus. This podcast is about starting up while we are still in college, testing ideas, creating a team, building something worthwhile, and adding value to other people's lives. Join us as we discuss the thrill of earning your first buck, tackling uncertainties, overcoming obstacles, and delighting others. Most of all, the Galata podcast is about seeing, understanding, and implementing so you can deliver on your audacious promise. He is an Indian engineer, innovator, and educational reformist. He likes to play with fire, ice, sun, earth, and children. He is the founding director of the Students' Educational and Cultural Movements of Ladakh, also called SECMOL, which was founded in 1988 by a group of students who had been, in his own words, the victims of an alien education system foisted on Ladakh, because over 95% of Ladakhi students failed the state 10th class exams every year. Today, the SECMOL campus runs on solar energy, uses no fossil fuels for cooking, lighting, or heating. What surprised me is that the entire campus is managed, maintained, and run by students. He has won several awards, most recently the Ramon Magsaysay Award, regarded as the Asian version of the Nobel Prize, for his contribution in harnessing nature, culture, and education for community progress. He has also won the Rolex Award for Enterprise, the Real Heroes Award, the Ashoka Fellowship for Social Entrepreneurship Award. His story inspired Aamir Khan's character, Phunsukh Wangdu, or as we all call it, Ramdas Shamaldas Chanchad, in the movie Three Idiots. More than anything else, इन्होंने देश के लिए जान नहीं जिंदगी दी है. So please join me in a conversation with the ceaselessly curious, humble and one of a kind Sonam Wangchuk. What were the conversations around the dinner table when you were growing up, Sonam?
Most of the times it was like childish ones. Brother did this and friend did this, and complaining to my mother, and my mother was almost fed up of this. I was the youngest of my four brothers, so most of the times that. But what I might share of the more profound conversations was a time when my older brothers were like teenagers and they were questioning everything. They were influenced by what was happening in Ladakh as it opened to the world with the road coming in and so-called modernization taking off. And what I still, often these days think back and think of is how wise my mother was about how to live in Ladakh. So I remember these discussions, particularly where my brothers would say, "Mother, why do you keep all these cows? They hardly give much milk. Why don't you sell them and we'll get a tractor to plow the fields?" Like every family, my family was a farming family, apart from other things they would do.
Off seasons.
Yeah. So my mother would say, "Well, if you bring a tractor, how will you get manure for the farms? And if you don't get manure for the farms and the farms do not produce well, how will you get the money to buy fuel for your tractor?" So I remember how wisely she could see the cycle, which I find very hard to see even today, that just replacing your animals with a tractor doesn't help. And she would, in those days, this was in the 70s, early 70s, she would say, if you remove the animals, manure will go out. And if you give it artificial fertilizers, which were the beginnings at that time, she would say it would not sustain the life in the soil. So it would become hard and won't support life. And that will then make the agriculture system fail. And I saw that happening exactly in other places who did use those, and she would resist. As an unschooled woman from remote rural village, she had the wisdom to see that these are all interconnected. You can't remove one little piece and think that it will still go on. So that's what I remember very often nowadays as we see the crisis of farmers getting into this debt trap. They sell their animals and buy those tractors. Now I see. And those farms don't have fertilizers now that they don't have animals. So they have to get fertilizers. To get the fertilizers, they have to get loans. And when the farm doesn't produce enough, they can't pay the credits. And when that happens, they commit suicide. She saw that back then when this green revolution was at its beginnings, and so-called educated, schooled people like my brothers would laugh at her, and she resisted and kept her animals, and thankfully so.
Wow. That brings me to a question that I've been wanting to ask you. In today's generation, what do you think education is for?
So, I feel education generally is to help children prepare for the life of the times they live. Okay? So, back when we were hunter-gatherers, education was about hunting, gathering, stamina, power, and so on. So the kids who were very sharp and very good at running after or running before predators were the heroes. Times changed. Today, those who are good at maths and science are the heroes, because we went through a process called Industrial Revolution, where everything could be done by machines, outsourced to energies other than our own, to the fossil fuels under the earth. And for that, what they needed was not the smartness on...
It's crackers.
Okay.
I do not know why they are bursting it now.
Good, they're happy. They do not need the agility of hunter-gatherers. So those were down, those heroes were down, and they needed science and maths. So those heroes started enjoying the limelight. Okay. But then times have changed. So 300 years ago, education was all about preparing the kids for the technologies that were coming up, conquering nature and building and making, and factories were the in thing. So that was what education became. But today, if you asked about today's children, I think we need to update this system. It's long overdue. We're still doing the same thing that caused all the problems of today. So today we are seeing the consequences of this extremely science and technology oriented education and lifestyle, because of which now air is unbreathable, water is undrinkable, earth is untouchable, and so on. And we are still putting the same fuel. And somebody clever said, if you do the same things, you'll get the same results. We don't seem to understand that. And therefore, I think today education should be about undoing all those things. Today it should be about healing the earth and nature rather than conquering it. Today it should be about reforesting and afforesting. But rather, I learned recently that most of our forestry institutes are still continuing with curricula that talks about how to cut the forests, how to exploit the forest, and that's their forestry school. Whereas forestry schools and all schools of today should be about how to green the planet. So it should be about, above all, healing the only home that we have, and of course developing sensitivities and empathy towards all living beings, not just myself or my family or my countrymen, but also our siblings in the wild. Animals and insects are our siblings on the same home planet. The trees, the rivers and mountains are our siblings and relatives. So extending this care for others, when we say care for others, so far we only say this is for other friends and relatives. It is all that we have on this planet home.
All the creatures.
Yeah.
Where were you when you first started undoing these? Because you've pretty much been a part of the traditional education system.
No, I haven't, actually. I have been a victim of that for some time, but I've been very, very lucky to not have to go to any school till I was some 8.5 or 9. So I did not, very luckily so, have any schools in my little village of 5 households, in a remote Ladakhi village. And while people would think that was a very sad situation, you didn't have a school to go, I feel I was very lucky that rather than learning about leaves and roots and shoots from faded pages of textbooks, I was on the farms with neighbors, children, and farmers, seeing seeds go into the earth, roots taking off and shoots coming out, leaves unfurling without having to bother with LEAF, leaf, LEAVES, leaves, which makes a child lose the very grasp of the magic of nature, in spellings of an alien language and so on. So I was actually very lucky to be able to learn about things from my mother and the village and in my own mother tongue. This is a luxury children don't get, they spend their time LEAF, LEVES in English and lose the soul, essence of the thing. So I was very lucky not to be schooled at all and to be taught in my mother tongue. And
until you were 7 years?
Until I was 8.5, I said. So around grade 3. Mother tongue has a magical effect. When you are good at your mother tongue, you can learn other languages very easily. I see these kids who struggle with English for 15 years of school and college and still tremble when they have to speak few lines in English. Whereas if you're given the confidence of expressing, communicating in your own mother tongue and generally the confidence of being good, you can acquire languages in matter of months. So I ended up speaking some 9 languages and most of them took no longer than 6 to 8 months. Important is that a child is given time to be comfortable at who he or she is and learn in her own language first and then learn the languages of the world.
I think it's become uncool to be good at your own language these days, especially the youngsters I interact with.
You're so right. I see people not only, to not speak Hindi or other regional languages, mother tongue, is sad, but worse is when they take pride in their broken mother tongue. I see in Delhi people speaking Hindi as if they were a European. This is the limit of inferiority complex. When you feel small speaking your own language, that is.
How were you feeling when you joined school after having about 8.5 years of free range cultivating or free range growing as a kid? How out of place were you? Were you like a rebel through school in your engineering days?
No, I was very silent and very reflective and so on, and very oppressed in the school. So
oppressed?
Yeah, because teachers didn't understand that I came from a different background. They expected me to learn as the situation was in Urdu or Hindi or English. None of these I spoke at that time. And my lack of language, alien language, was taken as something like retardedness or some, stupidity on my part. And because of that, they would treat me like an untouchable.
Like a wallflower.
So, let me tell you, I spent more time on the back bench, on top of the bench, or outside the classroom than in front of the teacher. And I would wonder, if I am weak, how does it help to send me outside the door? Would I learn more than in front of the teacher? But today I laugh and say, perhaps that was the only way I could be called an outstanding student.
I totally connect with you. Most of my school has been very similar. I was being given a special seat,
Mm.
tucked away in the corner so I would not make a lot of noise or galata, as they say in Kannada. Or I'd be kicked out of the class.
And this is what children are gifted with, energy to make galata and jump around. This is nature's software for learning. And we strip the children of all these things and make them into robots that stay silent, pin drop silent. That's not what education is about.
I love the way he says galata. When did you come out of that shell? Because you were aloof. You were in your shell.
I was pushed into that shelf. I wasn't when I was in the field, in my mother's lap, and with my grandparents. I was very jubilant, bubbling with energy. But school stripped me into almost like a dead piece. Yeah. But children are very good at learning, so you catch up. So I started catching up very soon. Started learning the language, understanding, and then picked up the science and maths, and I started doing quite well with others somehow, despite the school, rather than because of the school, I would say. And then I started wondering how what I learned could be used. So I'd always make some practical things. Even if the teachers didn't have, I'll make contraptions out of the science chapters and so on. So I started liking them, and I started liking debates and poetry and so on. So I was quite in the flow and beyond by 8th or 9th standard. Thanks to some very good teachers.
Yes.
I met some very, very good teachers. I met some very bad teachers who made my life hell. As I said, I was made to stand outside the class and so on. And then there was a time when I ran away from that other school, got into a very humble government school where the teachers were next to enlightened. They were so loving, they were so supportive of everything I did better than yesterday. More than better than the other kid, better than what I did yesterday. They were supportive, and soon I started flowering, and I was very good at public speaking. I was very good at poetry, almost everything. So I saw this personally, what a teacher can do to a child, and that's perhaps was one of the things that triggered my interest in how education happens, how teachers influence children, how learning happens or does not.
What are the misconceptions that you come across when people talk climate change? And do you think the situation is as worse as is being portrayed, or is it even more terrible?
So yes, I think it is very bad. I think the situation is very bad, as explained by many scientists, how if we continue, then there might be a point where we run into the runaway climate change, where it would be very difficult to stop, not to talk of reverse. It is dire. But for those who are doubtful, I would say it's better to be prepared. It's better to give the benefit of doubt and be ready with good actions than to be proven wrong and then you fall and you're nowhere. So even if you're doubtful, taking precautions doesn't hurt. And if you are clear, then all the better that we take precautions and change our ways. So the misconception that worries me is that people seem to think of solving the problem with more of the same. So they think of replacing, for example, fossil fuel cars with electric cars, and that alone is enough. I think we have to change our overall approach to life. I think we should derive happiness from simpler lives, not just replacing everything with an alternative solar powered thing. To learn to control your desires is a better and easier way to deal with it. I very much am inspired by what Buddha said in this. He said that for a human being, it's a greater achievement to conquer a single desire than to fulfill 1,000. So, rather than fulfilling 1,000 desires, If not with fossil fuel, I'll with solar energy. Desires are still desires. You're still chasing after desires. How about uprooting some of those desires? And then you don't need your fossil fuel. You don't even need your solar panels. You can live happily with conquering desires. So poor is not someone who doesn't have money. Poor is someone who keeps wanting more and more. So if you do not need more, you're rich at no money. And that's what.
I have one question wherein I want you to include how you are attempting to bring about this movement. I think that's very relevant for a lot of students. And I think they got to participate in that. You got to have a word about it.
Okay. So the world today needs personal behavior change at the same time as collective action and noise. But it should start with personal behavior change. It's good to join campaigns, movements, but also we need to change personally. And therefore, what we are planning is to have a platform where people around the world pledge and celebrate pledges to bring changes in themselves. And if we take care of ourselves, then the world takes care of itself. If each individual takes care of. So we're saying that we have been using crowdfunding a lot, and I think it's a beautiful way of getting everybody engaged in an issue. More than the money, which is the output of a crowdfunding campaign, I'm more impressed with the byproduct more than the product, which is engagement, awareness, involvement, and so on. So we are hoping to launch a crowdsourcing of goodness, crowdsourcing of pledges to do good to the planet, not necessarily contribute money, which is how things go, and that's when you have problems with whether it is credible, is it honest, and so on. We are going to launch a campaign where you can go to a site and pledge behavior changes. So you pledge to, say, go vegetarian, or half the amount of meat you eat. Now meat is a very brown substance that adds to climate change in big ways.
Yes.
So anyone who goes vegetarian or half vegetarian makes a huge contribution. So you press a tab and say, I do this, and it will say you're making a contribution worth $10,000. Which is huge and real. Or you could say, I'll never use escalators and lifts. I'll use the steps. Stay fit and keep the planet fit. And the site will say, if you do that for the whole year, that will be $5,000 worth of contribution. You say, I'll plant 10,000 trees or 100 trees. It will say, you're making so much contribution. Likewise, people around the world will go on this site and pledge and then keep up to those pledges. And this will run into trillions of dollars of contribution. Now, these will be easy because there is no real exchange of money, so no issues of credibility and so on. Yet it will be real. The overall effect on the planet will be that many $1 trillion of help to the sustenance of the planet. So a campaign like this that encourages people towards action, yet at the same time only individual action is not good enough. So it will also have how will you engage with community action. Join the eco club in your locality or join the Fridays for Future, and that could be a huge contribution of say $20,000. So we value it and put it, and thereby you feel you have made so much contribution to the planet, and you celebrate with others who do the same. It could be a huge movement where people pledge and keep to that, as New Year's are for resolutions. We want to put a more systematic organizing of resolutions from around the world. And now, this is mainly because we in Ladakh, when we make artificial glaciers or solar heated houses, we feel very good, but very soon we think that us doing this in some remote corner of the mountains doesn't really solve the problem. Unless people at large in these big cities change their behavior, climate change will continue and we'll be just making glaciers and solar houses, and that won't. Yes, that is a quick fix and not a lasting solution. So this is to say to the world that if you please live simply in the cities, we in the mountains may simply live. So, living simply is what is the call of the day, living simply. And that's something that Gandhi said, decades ago, live simply so others simply live. And we are hoping to launch this campaign to look for partners who can help us develop websites, who can help us evaluate individual actions and behaviors that account for how much support to the environment, or develop apps. For example, those who are good at developing apps can develop apps which will remind them of their pledges, how the pledges are going. For example, I remember there was this game which became very notorious, the Blue Whale Challenge.
Yes.
The Blue Whale. Now, this is thought of as a very nasty game, but you could have a positive blue whale where at every step you do something better to help the earth, you gain higher and higher, and kids could play a game of being champions of the planet. So some game developer can join this movement and develop a game around pledges for the planet. How to help teenagers, keep their pledges and help others and become eco heroes or warriors and get the same fun out of doing positive things for the planet, things like that. I call upon all young people or whoever, organizations, institutions, to join such a movement that starts out of India on 2nd October to source partners, but then on, say, 1st December or so goes global to get all countries participate in changing their behaviors. We can't only just protest and shout, we have to act also. That's the idea of this I Live Simply movement.
All the links regarding this campaign are listed in the show descriptions. Do have a look, and I would highly recommend each and every one of you to chime in and become an eco warrior in any small way that you can as a start.
Yeah. Well, failures are a part of every mission. Failures are lessons we learn. Failures are our course, if you call it. A child learns to walk only after failing 1,000 times and falling front, falling right. So we take it as a part of it. We have on an average maybe 7 or 8 failures for every success. So there have been many, and we don't think of them as something negative. They are the stepping stones on which you then move forward. Learn. Failures or mistakes are a problem when you make them twice. When they are because of your carelessness or your laziness, then it is a problem. Failure because of attempting is the biggest thing you can salute. Because if you don't attempt, you will never fail. In Urdu, there is a beautiful couplet which says, गिरते हैं शह सवार मैदान जंग में. Shah Sawar is a knight on horse, but only those who are knights on horse fall in the battlefield. वो तिफल क्या गिरे जो घुटनों के बल चले. A little kid, a baby who is a toddler will never fall. Fall will those who attempt something.
Okay, audience, we're continuing the interview as we travel with him in the car towards the railway station. So yes,
And not airport.
and not airport. Yes.
Take
Why? Tell us
trains.
why.
Because I believe taking trains is much cleaner means of transport than air travel. So I just was looking up, standard 1-hour flight makes around 300 kilograms of CO2, whereas the same if you do by train is about 25 kilograms. So it's important to tell them that we are traveling to the railway station. Let's make it cool to go by train.
Very unusual. You have these lifestyle changes that you have made very consciously. Can you give us a glimpse of that?
Well, your advocacy should be backed by personal lifestyle choices, right? Otherwise, they're empty. So, since I feel concerned about the environment and what's happening to the climate and so on, I should do my little bit also when I choose products that are greener, when I choose means of transport, or my lifestyle. For example, I was saying, I may look shabby because I don't iron my clothes, but I would rather look shabby than my planet does. Yeah? So, like that. You have to back it up. And if 7 billion people of the world make choices that are guided by what it does to other beings and not just about what it does to me, makes me look cool and so on, then something can be hoped. So many people consider such values rather than just all about me.
What are the lifestyle changes have you had? One is not ironing your shirt, other is taking the stairs when you can.
Yes, or trains instead of flights whenever possible. I can't take from Ladakh to Delhi, but other places in India I can. Various others, what food you eat. For example, vegetarian food is so light on the planet, whereas non-veg is very heavy. So, not from religious principles, but from environmental reasons, I've gone vegetarian. Fully from environmental reasons. I try to make it a point because there are many who, swear by this god and that god and go vegetarian but that's okay. But what it does to other beings right now, not next life, right now as we speak, is very important. So going vegetarian is great. If not vegetarian, now I'm not fanatic. You don't need to go vegetarian. You can reduce your meat consumption to half and you will still be contributing in a huge way. As they say, a kilogram of meat comes from so much of fodder and so on that could be feeding the people. You don't have to put the animals through all the pains and the planet through all the burdens.
A lot of individuals listening to this are either looking to start up something or are building companies or projects. And the usual first thing they do, because they are so limited by funds and support, they take the cheapest option possible, which is, even though they may not want to go sustainable or they want to take eco-friendly option, they are not able to. So how can they start shifting this in their small venture, in their startups, in their companies?
The cheaper ways are usually greener, just that most people think they are poor and they feel inferior about it. If you choose bicycles, you don't have to be poor to choose bicycles. Even if you don't have money, choose bicycles and proudly so. If you choose trains over aeroplanes, feel proud that you are also helping the environment, not just saving money. If you go vegetarian, not because you can't afford meat. It's okay if you don't have much money, but it is more important that you're helping the environment. So many times, not always, cheaper options are also cleaner options. And I really think poverty can be a fashion. Poverty should become cool. You see these kids with ripped jeans, torn jeans. I find that ridiculous. I'm all for ripped jeans, but the jeans should have ripped naturally from wearing it. So I have shoes that this year in 2019 will be 30 years old.
30 years old?
30 years old, yes. And I'm proud of that. Now, that is the kind of worn look that would be my fashion.
Making it fashionable, or even just carrying it along.
Yeah, and proudly, but not spending tons of energy in making your new jeans and then half a ton in tearing them. That's silly. That totally doesn't make sense. So wear your jeans fresh and new and wear it long enough that they are torn, and those are your, trophies, badges that you show off if you want, that this is 12 years old and therefore it has ripped and I'm proud of it. Not I bought it yesterday and I ripped them today. Is what I would say to the youth today. Those were youth of yesteryears who perhaps took pride in these mock ripped jeans. Youth of tomorrow, I hope, will take pride in naturally ripped jeans and naturally unironed clothes because they save energy. When I don't iron my clothes, it saves energy enough for a rural household to light up for 4 days.
So 1 hour of not ironing.
Yes, can be equivalent to 4 days of light for homes. And how could we just to look a little neat, spend all that energy and make all these power plants belch smoke with coal to remove some creases from a silly shirt when that kills so many.
You make it sound so gruesome.
Because when you iron your shirts, you should know that somewhere thermal power plants are belching smoke, which is causing air pollution. And air pollution alone in the past few years killed roughly 10 million people a year. 7 to 10 million people a year. Now that sounds like a large number. I wasn't sure how large it was until I researched on internet about how many people died in the worst tragedy, that was like World War I and II. And I found that roughly 100 million people died over 10 years. Do the maths. It comes to how many a year? 10 million a year. And that many people are dying from air pollution today, and we don't even recognize that war. We only talk of Second World War, First World War. Here, there is a war right now which is killing 7 to 10 million people here. And part of that war, the weapons of that war are not guns and daggers. They are electric irons, cars. Your sleek car is actually a weapon of mass destruction that drops 3 to 4 kilograms of CO2 every kilometer. You have to see these modern, harmless looking, sleek, fashionable things in another light.
That you're listed are the ambitions of the individuals listening to this show.
Yes, but not tomorrow. Yesterday's successful measured their success with aeroplane rides and cars. Tomorrow's, I'm sure, will be much more wiser than that. They'll consider, as I said, conquering a desire bigger than fulfilling our.
How measure success?
I don't know. It depends. As happy as you are with who you are. If you are very happy with very little, you are totally successful. If you are unhappy with all the wealth in the world and the success, so-called success, you are a failure.
Thanks to Bhumi College for allowing and facilitating this interview.